There we go. Chapter 10, Vsphere DRS. As you see, there is only one section, so this won't take too long. The Vsphere DRS will take your computing capacity across a collection of servers into a logical resource pool. It allows virtual machines to be used within the predefined rules. So all the resources that are provided by each host now is just merged into one. Of course, it works best when vMotion migration requirements are met. It can be used for load balancing. Definitely good idea to have shared storage, because they'll need to, since we are sharing all our resources across all hosts, everything including storage should be accessible to all. You can set this to fully automated so that Vsphere handles all this for you, or you could manually or partially if you want to work with it. And you can also set how aggressive or how conservative you want the migration to happen between systems. The vRealize Operations Manager will combine data and predict future demand and determine when a hotspot will occur. By doing this, it will handle when to move a virtual machine to another system, to maybe another system stronger, has more resources and will be able to handle more. So let's move it that way. Or, hey, let's provide more RAM because at about 8 a.m. is when there's a lot of logins. It does that for you, so you don't have to do it. You can place the swap files in either where the virtual machine resides or at a different place, which is important again because virtual machines may be moving around all this shared resource, and you need everything to be accessible as it flows from system to system. You can say how many hosts or how many virtual machines will be on a host or separated. If you're going to have VMs that are communicate heavily with one another, then it's more ideal to have affinity rules versus anti-affinity. So for example, your DHCP, your DNS, your Active Directory, those three tend to talk a lot to one another, so it's best to put them in an affinity rule. All right, so you can define them by host groups, just like I said, the 3 that I just mentioned. Virtual machines can belong to multiple VM groups. So you can play around with what configuration works best for you. A VM host affinity rule will say the relationship between that VM's DRS group and its host DRS group, and that can either be required or preferential. And then you can specify some options like this has to run on host in the group, or must not run, or should or shouldn't. Here's a affinity rule preferential. It's a soft enforced, so it can be violated if necessary. For example, we have in group A 1 VM and in group B 2. It's not an enforcement, so we can move it over to the other group. or as required will prevent the VM from running anywhere else. Like, let's say, based on licensing. You can configure how automated this will be for the entire cluster. So here's the VM override. When you add or move a host into a DRS cluster, you can actually keep the resource pool of wherever it came from. Those are not lost. So you don't have to reconfigure that. It'll move with it. There is a summary tab that'll provide you information about DRS. So you can see if everything is fully balanced between the DRS cluster, or if there's something that needs to get adjusted. You see how much power, or the sum utilization of CPU, for example. In this case, we have one system that is being used and the other one who's not. DRS can give you recommendations. So you don't have to figure it out all on your own. You can hit the run DRS now, and it'll tell you some recommendations to do, and either you could override or you could apply them right away. So for example, in this case, it's telling us, it's suggesting us to move a virtual machine from one host to another to balance memory. Anything that goes on with events, they will get logged. So we can check that out later to see the state or review what happened. If you need to do any maintenance when in DRS, you'll definitely need to enable maintenance mode. You won't be able to power on or migrate any VMs to that host while it's in maintenance mode. But it does allow a DRS to handle migrating any VMs out of the way so that you can do whatever you need on that specific host that will be taken into maintenance mode. With removing, again, you have to take it into maintenance mode to ensure everything is cleared out. Then you can remove it. And then the overall resources for that cluster will decrease once it's out. The resource pool will stay. It is possible to disable DRS. It is not something that's turned on once and stays on. You can turn it off later. All the resource pools will get removed. All the affinity rules won't be reestablished, so they'll have to be turned on later. Any licensing issues may need to be dealt with. But if you want to avoid losing those resource pools, do a snapshot. If you're looking at improving virtual machine performance, here is kind of a way for you. You could start by having a DRS cluster and then having multipathing, use NIC teaming, moving up the chain in order to improve VM performance. And you notice a lot of these are network-based because most of our VMs, especially in these scenarios that we're talking about, they're not running on one VM, or sorry, they're not running on one host, they're running on multiple hosts. Vsphere HA and DRS don't seem to play well together. So it's really If you want to use HA, then you'll probably go well with fault tolerance versus DRS. Cool. Any questions? Okay. Well, as always, there are labs to do in Canvas. And if you get stuck on anything, feel free to say so in Discord. So with that, I have no reason to hold you hostage, so I will stop the recording and end the